So shortly after defeating the county's first black sheriff, this is Columbus County, North Carolina, Sheriff-elect Jody Greene, he apparently decided to celebrate. So he took his own phone call and decided to talk about how he's gonna get those black officers, every one of them that works in his department. The audio of this phone call was just released to a local news station, and it's pretty damning. Let's look at some details of what it is that Jody Greene had to say about some of his officers. He said, "F them black bastards. They think I'm scared, they're stupid. I don't know what else to do with them, so it's just time to clean them out." Man, good job, what a leader this guy is. So these conversations happened with interim chief Jason Souls. This is back in February of 2019. Jason Souls came in here because I think it's a bit of an odd situation. I'm curious why Greene had this thought process, but let's get to more of what happened. Because at the time, Greene was still embroiled in the aftermath of a tight election that's against former Sheriff Louis Hatcher, who is black, which he won by a margin of only 34 votes. As the winner was still being determined, Jason Souls had been named the interim sheriff. Now, current day, Souls is planning to run against this same Sheriff Greene, and he released this audio of that phone call to the local news outlet. So apparently Souls also brought the audio to the governor's office and the attorney general's office as well, but the recordings are now only being looked at by the State Bureau of Investigation for possible obstruction of justice. Again, this is 2019 when he said all this. So back to Greene. In these recordings, he can be heard telling the interim sheriff that he hated black Democrats, didn't trust the black detention officer in the sheriff's office, and would fire people who were, quote, guilty by association of supposedly leaking information about him. So during these calls, Greene also expressed his suspicions that one of the department's black officers was leaking this unspecified information that he's so worried about to then Sheriff Louis Hatcher, the black sheriff. He says, "I'm sick of it. I'm sick of these black bastards. I'm going to clean house and be done with it. And we'll start from there. There's a snitch in there somewhere telling what we're doing," is what he said on another phone call. He said, "And I'm not gonna have it. I'm not gonna have it." Apparently, he's not gonna have it. More on this, because Greene also disparaged Melvin Campbell, a black sergeant at the sheriff's office who had worked under Greene for 30 years at the North Carolina Highway Patrol. He said more. He said, "We'll cut the snake's head effing off, period. And Melvin Campbell is as big a snake as Louis Hatcher ever dared to be. Every black that I know, you need to fire him to start with. He's a snake." So of course, he was looking to make sure he followed through on these promises and these declarations, especially about these black officers in his department. A little bit more, much of what Greene promised to do did come to pass. The two black officers on the county sheriff's command staff were demoted, and one of them was eventually fired. This investigation is continuing ongoing, and Greene did respond. There was another point that I talked about this morning on the watch list when he said there was nothing racist about what I said. I didn't say anything racist. What's racist? I don't have any actions or thoughts that are racist except for everything that you heard on those phone calls. One more thing about what Greene said. He maintained that his former election opponent had been spreading false rumors about him in the aftermath of the 2018 election, and that the conversations heard in the recordings were somehow altered to create a misleading representation of him, because he also accused Souls of being an officer with poor performance who is now trying to run a smear campaign against him weeks ahead of this election in November. Again, the guy that's running against him now is the one who released the phone calls, because back in 2019, Greene decided to call Souls and divulge all this to him, a fellow white officer, and he's like, "He'll keep my secret, won't he?" Apparently not.
So the context of what Souls did is actually really important to the story, because Souls did not tape this years ago and then just release it now when he's running for office. He actually then brought it to the authorities. He said in the beginning, of course he wasn't taping, it's just a random call between an interim sheriff and a guy who at the time was leading and was likely to be the next sheriff, right? But Greene started saying these crazy things, and Souls like, "This is really terrible. I think I gotta record a part of this call just so people know this is real," because he's threatening to fire all these black officers, and if he does, well, I mean, that's terrible, right? And so he then takes the tape and gives it to authorities. He gives it to local authorities, and they say, "Oh yeah, we're on it." So he waits and waits, and then he goes back, "We're on it, nothing. He takes it to the FBI, nothing. He takes it to everybody for about 3 years. Then finally he says, nobody's doing a goddamn thing about it. He's like, well, damn it, I'm gonna run against him and I'm gonna show everybody the tapes. Now, by the time he shows the tapes, they're like, oh yeah, you're running against him. Okay, but guys, that's not just the frustrating part of the story. It's also super important because think about all of the agencies that thought, oh, he's gonna fire all the black officers. Oh, and he did fire all the black. He said he was gonna do it. The racist thing where he fires everyone for being black, and then he did do it. He either fired or demoted all of them under his command. And they think that's no big deal. So the local authorities don't do anything, local government doesn't do anything, FBI doesn't do anything. They think that that's normal. That's actually more dispiriting than this one racist sheriff. But do you think that sheriff's gonna treat not only his own employees, that's already a given, right? He already did fire and demote them. You think he's gonna treat the black people in that town fairly when he thinks every black he knows is a snake? You read the quote again. Every black he knows is a snake and they're black bastards. And then he says, and I bet you it's mostly genuine, he goes, I don't know what's racial about that. Because they genuinely think that their 100% racism is so normal that they're saying, wait, but that's not bad, is it? Because racist sounds bad, but that's not bad, it's just being rational. I hate every black person and I fire them because that's what anybody would do, right? No, that's what racists would do. So that's, look guys, as I saw this story, I thought, Jesus Christ, because I'm one of you guys. If you have trouble believing how awful people can be like this, oh, I've been in your shoes. I remember when I was young, I was growing up, I was actually a Republican, and people would tell me about cops behaving badly, and I'd be like, no. Because it was so outside of my experience. I'm like, why would they do that? That's so randomly hateful and vicious, that just doesn't make any sense. Well, whether it makes sense or not, they definitely do it. They definitely do it. And apparently they do it so regularly that nobody even thinks it's out of the ordinary.
This story, if I can be totally transparent, I always tell people about how, when you think of racism, people don't think of systemic racism. People don't think of like institutions or maybe even processes in which they're not even conscious they're a part of, that concept. When they think of racism, they think of the old timey racism, like, the white sheriff in the town who calls the black person the N-word and stuff like that. Whereas this kind of seems like one of those cases. This is not one of those like, well, I don't know if this is exactly as, institutional as it is just overt. That's how I would describe this. Overt racism, hardcore, overt, classic old-timey racism by the sheriff. So it's pretty wild to see the story taking place in 2022, the year of our Lord.
It's weird though that we got to this point though. I mean, you said it's old-timey, regular racism. But I guess that's, as Cenk was pointing out, maybe the surprising part is then after it's presented to other folks, they don't even think, before you go, yeah, maybe we're looking to cover this up, but it's literally just we're not gonna do anything because a response time many times from authority figures or anybody like that, it's once the pressure comes on, once people then say, hey, why aren't you doing something about this? Which apparently now is the case. And he was, I think, excommunicated from some sheriff's association in the area. That's the extent of it. Not even that, they were about to vote on it. And he said, you know what, I'm just gonna resign anyway, just to avoid maybe that embarrassment or something like that. So even that level of penalty wasn't gonna happen until there was pressure applied by people who went, what are you guys doing down there? But again, you may hear folks who like to think the way, as Cenk was talking about, many Republicans still do, that no way. But as we see more and more tapes, listen to more and more audio, then someone says, how do you think this guy would train his officers when they encounter maybe one of those folks that he thinks are just bad people based off of who they are? You have to find yourself answering that question before you go on continuing your belief systems. That's all, just think about it. When someone asks it to you, they're not looking to pigeonhole you, put in some corner, tell you now you have to say you're racist. But just understand, maybe detach yourselves from people that are like this and acknowledge the truth. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. In fact, your world will get better.
Yeah, I gotta say two more things. So unfortunately, there's a pattern throughout a lot of our stories, which is law enforcement's complete indifference to justice and injustice. So when cops do things that are wrong, what do? Of course, they all rally around the cop who did the thing that was wrong, right? They thin blue line, they call it, right? So in Ohio, Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old, gets shot within 2 seconds. Obviously, the cops should have said, put your hands up. They should have inquired. He didn't need to shoot the kid, right? And the kid was actually no threat at all. But every cop says no. that injustice is perfectly justified. Really? Perfectly justified? You like that doesn't cause you concern at all? Rape test kits, tens of thousands of them, maybe hundreds of thousands of them lying around the country. They don't even bother using them. They never actually do the test. Well, don't you care? A woman was raped. Don't you care? Like, we gotta solve the case. It's right there, the evidence is right there. They don't even test them, they don't use them. Because they don't care about justice. And that's just amazing to me. It's the people that are supposed to care the most about justice care the least. And so in this situation, this guy should be fired in an instant. Like, you can't have him be sheriff of black people when he thinks every black person is a snake. I mean, that's insane. But yet we have to try to convince people. We have to cajole people. We have to plead with people. Can you please not have this vicious racist as a person with a gun and the badge who could take our lives and our freedom based on his preconceived notions of who we are? And they say no. No, we'll have to think about it. We'll have to do, and then be a giant long process, maybe yes. And by the way, only because you caught us are we gonna think about it. If you hadn't caught us, Souls gave us the evidence, him on tape. It is crystal clear. Don't care, don't care. That's our law enforcement in this country, and that's super scary.
Can I just say one quick thing, is that Liam Neeson actually said a very similar line and apologized for it. That's an actor. That's an actor being like, okay, I shouldn't have used that term in that line, and I apologize. This is sheriff. So I would assume if Liam Neeson can do that, then a sheriff could probably do the same thing.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.